Happy Sunday, everyone. As you know, I'm recording this on a Friday, so I'm not even going to pretend that it's the weekend. But I've been back in the studio this week, and I hope you had a great time watching all the content from the last week. I know some of it wasn't necessarily topical, but when I'm away, I'm going to try and produce content that I think you'll find interesting rather than bust a gut trying to cover news stories when I'm out of the office. And in about a week's time, when it comes up to Thanksgiving, I'm going to try and do the same thing because I'm going to be out of the office for nearly a week and a half. And also in a reference to the previous Sunday video, yes, this screen behind me is on because I'm actually rendering Friday's show and it's uploading to the internet. So while this computer is doing its thing, I'm recording this. So what I want to talk to you about today, well, I want to talk to you about holiday conversations. You know, it's getting to that point of the year. There's Hanukkah coming up, there's Christmas, there's Kwanzaa, there's Thanksgiving, all these other things that are happening. And regardless of whether you're celebrating or not, the chances are at this time of year, it's pretty traditional to get together with friends and family, have a nice meal, enjoy each other's company, maybe catch up on what's been going on in the year. There'll be some road trips happening. We've done some great videos in the past on planning road trips, so go watch them if you haven't watched them already. But today I want to talk about the conversations that happen around the dinner table and whether you should be having them, whether you should be avoiding questions, whether you should towards politics, whether you should towards just your own personal experience. And I'm curious to see what you all think about how you would go about broaching the subject of electric vehicles. You know the kind of person I'm talking about, the crazy uncle or the relative who's really not convinced that electric cars are any good. And they are going to spend a reasonable amount of time at whatever celebration you happen to be at, whatever meal, or maybe even a colleague at work at an office party, telling you how rubbish your car is, how electric vehicles are worse for the environment than internal combustion engine vehicles. And there are some things that you can do, and there are some things that maybe you shouldn't do in order to help that conversation go smoothly. I think I'd start by saying that the first thing you want to make sure that you don't do is make somebody feel bad about their own personal choices. People don't like being told they're wrong. I don't like being told I'm wrong. I'm sure you don't like being told that you're wrong either. So if you're coming at somebody who has maybe broached the subject of electric cars and you're going to tell them flat out that their choices are wrong, they're not going to want to listen to you. And so in a situation like this, I tend towards my own personal experience. So I'll explain, for example, how electric cars work for us, how we've been driving them for 10 years. We have, as a family, been driving electric cars now since actually it's nearly 12 years now. Explain the experience, the ownership. Be willing to talk about the pros and the cons rather than just create this all too impossible rosy picture. And I think one of the things that electric car fans and people who drive EVs have a bad habit of doing, as with many other things, is that we have a tendency to just talk about the positives, not the negatives. And I think if you want someone to take you seriously, you need to be able to talk frankly and honestly about both sides. It's one of the things that I've held very dear to me when running Transport Evolved is if there's something negative about a car company or there's something negative about a particular fuel type, you owe it to yourself to discuss those things and discuss how those challenges can be overcome. So for example, if we're talking about batteries, talking about mining of the cobalt in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is anything but democratic, but I digress. At the moment, large amounts of cobalt are mined in the DRC, and some of the mines, especially some of the artisan mines in the DRC, do make use of child labor. Rather than get angry with someone who brings that up, say, okay, yeah, you're right, it is an issue. These car companies are addressing it. I've decided to support these car companies. If you have, explain why, and be able to discuss things in an informed way rather than what I've seen in the comments section of late, which is, that's fake news, you're lying. Ah. When you get angry with someone, it means that they don't want to listen to you. And if you're at the dinner table, especially if you're a family gathering or an office gathering, the last thing you want to do is to have a full-blown argument with someone. So maybe if you're coming up to spending time with family for Thanksgiving or Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or whatever, office party, then take some time to think about how you are going to respond to tough questions. In the same way that you might if it was a political conversation. So, for example, if you identify with one political party and everybody else in your family identifies with a different political party, how are you going to have that conversation to make sure that you're not at each other's throats? You need to be able to have a respect for the other side of the conversation rather than just tell someone they're wrong, rather than just tell someone that you disagree and they're bad people. And so the conversation that I tend towards when having conversations about EVs is, as I said, I talk about how they work for us, how we found them, how we charge our cars using 100% renewable electricity. We buy renewable electricity for our home from PGE, which is our local utility company. They have a 100% renewable tariff. That's the thing we use to recharge our cars on. And in the past, we have offset our carbon footprint as well. So be willing to discuss that. You know, maybe you look up carbon trading, which is a really interesting concept. And it's not about telling people that they have to kind of do away with all the things that they really enjoy. Because I think that's one of the things that when you are talking to someone who's maybe not talked about electric cars before or has this impression that electric cars are things for the wealthy, they're playthings, they're not real, they're not practical, or that somehow they're going to have to give up all these things. So go in and be willing to discuss these topics in an informed way and a personal way, rather than a I'm right, you're wrong way. I'm sure a lot of you do that anyway, but I'm curious, how do you discuss topics like this over the dinner table? How do you discuss global warming? How do you discuss the politics of electric cars, tax incentives? How do you broach these subjects in a fair way that gets your point across without making people cross? Because if you are going to be an advocate, and I would suggest that if you're talking about these topics as an owner, then you become a little bit of an advocate, even if you don't want to be. How do you discuss those topics without sounding like a nut job? How do you convince somebody else that the way that you're doing things might work for them? And also, I'm curious to know how many of you offer test drives to family and friends and what the experiences have been in the past when you offer a test drive to someone over a Christmas holiday, for example. Did the person you gave a test drive to enjoy it? Did they then go ahead and make a change and buy an electric car? And similarly, if they didn't enjoy it, how did you address that issue? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I hope that you have a very happy Thanksgiving if you are in the United States, or you are an American citizen around the world and celebrating, or you just picked up Thanksgiving as a good idea and you're celebrating it wherever you happen to be in the world. I know we used to celebrate it in the UK because I was married to an American, admittedly, but obviously there are people around the world who still celebrate it for whatever their own personal reasons are. And it is a time of year for us all to get together and enjoy each other's company and to look for unity and to look for common ground rather than fighting against one another and trying to prove that we're right and everybody else is wrong, because nobody likes a smart ass, basically. Cheers. I'll see you next week. And next week there'll be a pre-recorded episode because I'm going to be away, obviously, for Thanksgiving. And then the following weekend, I'm going to be in Chicago being a giant animal. So I'll record 2 of these as soon as I've done this one. Thanks for watching. Keep evolving.